In the Bible, God never said, try not to fear. He said, do not fear. That means fear was never an option. Let's let that breathe for a second, Tim. This isn't a friendly suggestion. Right. It's a divine command. It's in the same category as do not steal, do not lie, or do not kill.
Welcome to the God Will Always Provide podcast. My name is Joshua, and I'm here with my good friend Timothy.
That's the critical distinction. Most of us treat fear as an uncontrollable emotion, like a wave that just crashes over us.
Yeah.
We feel it and we think, well, this is just happening to me. But God frames it as a choice.
Wow.
He frames it as an issue of obedience. And that's both challenging and incredibly empowering.
It's empowering because God never gives a command without also providing the means to obey it.
Right.
He wouldn't command a fish to climb a tree, so if he commands us not to fear, it means he has given us everything we need to live a life free from its control.
Exactly. And he tells us what that provision is.
Okay.
2 Timothy 1:7 is so clear. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Notice what he did not give us. Fear is not from God.
Not from him.
The tools to defeat fear, his power, his love, his self-control, are from God.
So we've been trying to fight a spiritual battle with emotional tools. Yeah, we try to think happy thoughts or just be brave. But you're saying the biblical weapon against fear isn't our own courage, but our obedience and trust in him.
Precisely. The opposite of fear isn't courage, it's trust.
Trust.
And this idea is woven into the fabric of creation. Go back to the very beginning, to Genesis. God established a divine order.
He did. He created humanity and gave us this unique authoritative role. Yes, Genesis 1:26 says, let us make man in our image, and let them have dominion. Dominion, that's a powerful word.
It is.
It means we were given authority, responsibility, and in stewardship over his creation.
We were made to be his representatives, his managers on earth.
Right.
We're the only part of creation made in his image. That alone should tell us something about our position. So when we feel small, scared, or think we can't do something he's called us to do, we're essentially forgetting our God-given identity.
That's where so much fear comes from, isn't it?
Totally.
That feeling of being small and powerless. The fear of, I'm not equipped for this. This challenge is too big for me. I'm going to fail.
Yes, but in those moments, we are forgetting our commission. We're essentially forgetting our commission. It's like a police officer being afraid to stop traffic. He has the authority, the uniform, the backing of the entire city. His authority isn't his own, it's delegated.
Right, delegated. Our authority isn't our own, it's delegated from the King of the universe. To fear is to doubt the one who gave the commission. And what I love is that God doesn't just leave us with the command alone.
No.
He always attaches it to a promise. It's not just a cold order. Think about the most famous fear not verse, Isaiah 41:10.
So do not fear, for I am with you.
Do not be dismayed, for I am your God.
I will strengthen you and help you.
Wow.
I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. The command, do not fear, is bookended by 5 powerful promises. The command is the lock. The promises are the key.
So let's make this real. You lose your job.
Yeah.
The fear of foreclosure, of not being able to feed your family, it's immense. It feels completely rational.
It does.
The feeling is real.
Right. But the command stands. Do not fear. The act of obedience isn't pretending you have a job. The act of obedience is declaring, God, you are my provider. My job was a resource, but you are my source. I will trust you. That is how you obey the command. Or you get a terrifying report from the doctor. Yeah, that's a big one. The fear of pain, of the unknown, it's suffocating. And again, the command stands firm. Do not fear. Right. The obedience is to say, God, you are the great physician. You are my comfort. My life is in your hands, and no matter the outcome, you are good and you are with me. That is the victory over fear.
So fear is ultimately a form of spiritual amnesia.
Yes.
It makes us forget who God is and who we are in him.
That's it perfectly. Fear is a lie whispered in our ear that says God has lost control, that his promises are void, that our circumstances are bigger than our Creator.
Wow.
And every time we give in to it, we are agreeing with that lie.
But obedience to the command, do not fear, is our declaration of faith.
Exactly. It's the loudest way we can proclaim to ourselves, to the world, and to the enemy that our God is in control. Fear is not from God. Nope. Obedience and trust are. And nothing good you are called to do is beyond your reach when you walk in that truth. So we've talked about the what and the why.
Right.
When we come back, we are going to get intensely practical and discuss the daily habits and spiritual disciplines that help us walk this out. Because this isn't a one-time decision. No, it's a moment-by-moment battle, and God has given us the weapons to win.
Now, here's a question we'd like you to think about until we return. What is the one recurring fear in your life, and what specific promise from God can you use as your weapon against it the next time it appears? Welcome back to the God Will Always Provide podcast. I'm Joshua here with Timothy, and we've been unpacking the biblical command, do not fear. Before the break, we talked about how this isn't a suggestion, it's a command, like do not steal or do not kill.
And we asked you to think about this. What is the one recurring fear in your life? And what specific promise from God can you use as your weapon against it? Now, let's get practical. How do we actually obey this command moment by moment?
Great question. The first thing we need to understand is that obedience to do not fear starts in our thought life. 2 Corinthians 10:5 tells us to take every thought captive to obey Christ. Fear always begins with a thought.
Exactly. It's that initial thought. What if I lose my job? What if something happens to my family? What if I fail? The moment that thought enters, we have a choice. Do we let it take root, or do we immediately counter it with God's truth?
This is where scripture memorization becomes absolutely crucial. When you know God's promises by heart, you have immediate ammunition against fear. When the thought comes, I can't handle this, you immediately counter with, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
And it's not just about positive thinking. This is spiritual warfare. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us we're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces. Fear is one of the enemy's primary weapons.
So true. Let's talk about some specific strategies. First, the practice of declaring God's character out loud. When fear tries to tell you God has abandoned you, you literally speak aloud. God, you are my refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. You will never leave me nor forsake me.
There's power in vocalization. It engages your mind, your voice, your hearing, your whole being in the act of faith. Plus, the enemy hears it too. He knows you're not backing down.
Second strategy, immediate prayer. The moment fear surfaces, you turn it into a conversation with God. Father, this fear is trying to tell me you're not in control, but I know you are. Help me trust you in this situation.
And here's something powerful. Thanksgiving in the midst of fear. Not thanking God for the scary situation, but thanking Him for His faithfulness, His provision, His presence. It's hard to be afraid and genuinely grateful at the same time.
That's so good. Psalm 23 is a perfect example. David doesn't deny the valley of the shadow of death exists. He acknowledges it. But then he says, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. He's not pretending the danger isn't real. He's declaring that God's presence is more real.
And notice David's confidence comes from relationship, not circumstances. He calls God his shepherd. He knows him personally. This is why quiet time, prayer, Bible study, these aren't just spiritual disciplines, they're fear-fighting weapons.
Let's talk about community too. Ecclesiastes says a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. When you're facing a fearful situation, having brothers and sisters who can pray with you, remind you of God's faithfulness, speak truth over your life, that's invaluable.
And here's something we often miss, the power of testimony. When you share how God has been faithful in the past, it strengthens your faith for the present challenge. It's like building a memorial of God's goodness.
That's powerful. Now, let's address something that trips up a lot of believers. What about when the fear seems rational, when there's a real threat, real danger, real uncertainty?
This is crucial. The command, do not fear, doesn't mean don't be wise or don't take precautions. Jesus sent out the disciples and told them to be as shrewd as snakes and innocent as doves. Wisdom and faith work together.
Right, you can take steps to address a situation while still trusting God with the outcome. You can go to the doctor, look for a new job, have difficult conversations, all while declaring, God, I'm doing my part, but I trust you with the results.
And sometimes God calls us to do scary things. When he told Joshua to lead Israel into the promised land, it was genuinely dangerous. But God didn't minimize the challenge. He said, "Be strong and courageous, for I am with you."
Let's get even more practical. What does this look like in specific areas where people commonly struggle with fear? Financial security, for instance.
Great example. Financial fear is huge for most people. The obedience to do not fear might look like tithing, even when money is tight, because you're declaring that God is your provider. It might mean being generous when your flesh wants to hoard.
Or in relationships, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being hurt. The obedience might be having that difficult conversation, setting that boundary, or choosing to forgive even when you don't feel like it.
Health concerns, this is a big one. When you get a scary diagnosis or you're dealing with chronic illness, the obedience is saying, God, you are sovereign over my body. You know exactly what I need. I will follow medical advice, but my hope is in you.
And parenting. Oh man, the fears that come with parenting. Will my children make good choices? Will they follow God? Will I mess them up? The obedience is training them up in the way they should go while trusting God with their hearts.
You know what I love about all these examples? In each case, the obedience to do not fear doesn't mean being passive. It means active trust. It means taking steps of faith even when you can't see the full picture.
That's the key word, faith. Hebrews 11:1 says faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Fear looks at circumstances. Faith looks at promises.
And here's something beautiful. The more you practice this, the stronger your faith muscle becomes. The first time you choose trust over fear, it might be really hard. But the 100th time, you have a track record of God's faithfulness.
Let's talk about the ultimate example, Jesus himself. In the Garden of Gethsemane, facing the cross, he experienced what we might call fear or dread. He was sorrowful, even unto death. But what did he do with it?
He turned it into surrender. Not my will, but yours be done. He didn't deny the difficulty of what was ahead, but he chose trust over fear, obedience over self-preservation.
And that's our model. We don't have to be superhuman. We don't have to pretend we're never afraid. But we do have to choose in those moments whether we're going to trust God or trust our fears.
And remember, this isn't about perfection. This is about direction. You might feel the fear, but you don't let it drive your decisions. You acknowledge it, then you declare God's truth over it.
I want to share something personal here. A few years ago, I was facing a major career decision. Everything in me was afraid of failure, afraid of not being able to provide for my family, afraid of making the wrong choice.
That's so real.
But I realized that my fear was really about control. I was afraid because I couldn't guarantee the outcome. And that's when God reminded me, I was never in control anyway. He was. My job was to be faithful in the next step, not to orchestrate the entire journey.
That's beautiful. And that touches on something crucial. Fear often reveals where we're trying to play God in our own lives, where we're trusting in ourselves instead of trusting in Him.
Exactly. The command, do not fear, is really an invitation to dependence. It's God saying, you don't have to carry this burden. I've got it.
And here's what's amazing. When you start living this way, it doesn't just change your own life, it impacts everyone around you. Your spouse sees you choosing trust over anxiety. Your children see you making decisions based on faith, not fear.
You become a walking testimony that God is trustworthy. People watch how you handle challenges and they see something different. They see peace in the midst of storms.
That's the power of obedience to do not fear. It's not just personal transformation, it's generational impact. You're breaking cycles of fear and establishing patterns of faith.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this challenge. Choose one area where fear has been holding you back. Maybe it's a conversation you need to have, a step of obedience you need to take, a dream you need to pursue.
And instead of focusing on all the ways it could go wrong, focus on this truth. God said, do not fear because He has equipped you with everything you need. His power, His love, His self-control, They're already yours.
Remember, fear is not from God. The courage to obey Him is. Nothing good you are called to do is beyond your reach when you walk in this truth.
Take that step. Have that conversation. Make that decision. Not because you're not afraid, but because you're more convinced of God's faithfulness than you are afraid of the unknown.
God will always provide. He said, do not fear, not to burden you, but to free you to live the abundant life He has planned for you.
Thanks for joining us on the God Will Always Provide podcast. We're Joshua and Timothy, and we believe that when you truly understand that fear was never an option, it changes everything.
Until next time, choose trust over fear and watch how God shows up in your life. God bless.